What's up, everybody? Welcome to Common Sense, the podcast. Excited to have you guys all here with us today. Today, we are joined by a true sales warrior, Jon Sansone. He's got over 34 years of experience in cold outreach and sales. Jon has seen it all, and you guys are going to get to hear a lot of really amazing stories tonight. From struggling with $24K in debt and battling depression in his early 20s to becoming financially independent, Jon's story is one of resilience, grit, and the mastery of the art of sales, which is why I asked him to come share his story with you guys today. He's also the author of Sales Warrior, and he's an avid reader like me, and he's read over 150 books on leadership, sales, and history, and, you know, all the good shit you guys are always wanting to learn about. So today we're going to dig deep into Jon's tactics, his experiences, and all this wisdom he has locked up over there. So you guys, please welcome Jon to the show. Jon, pleasure to have you on the show, man.
Great being here, Garrett. Thanks a lot for having me, dude. I mean, so awesome.
Yeah, man. Thanks for reaching out. Again, you guys always hear this. I tell you guys all the time, like, we know each other from Apex.
Right.
And, you know, you reached out and we're just like, hey, man, I've seen you at the Apex events, you know, here and there. And, you know, like, let's talk. And here we are. We're going to talk for you guys tonight. So I'm excited to do this one with you.
Man, cheers to Apex, man. Ryan Stewman, what he's doing over there, fantastic. I mean, when I found out about that, I was like, my God, that's like 4 miles from my house.
Same.
Like, yeah, I'm like, how is this? How am I just now finding out about this?
Yeah.
You know? So, but awesome, man. So what do you guys want to know about sales?
Man, I mean, let's just, first of all, tell everybody a little bit about yourself. Tell everybody where you're from, what kind of family, house you grew up in. Tell them a little bit of what got you here in the first place.
You know, absolutely. I mean, so I'm a basic, like, middle-class guy. And I grew up with my family owning their own business. So my mom and my dad, they owned a flower shop that my granddad started. So, you know, from an early age, I was thrown into work, you know. And I was telling somebody the other day, my parents would just take me out of school to work, like on like holidays and stuff like that, Mother's Day, Valentine's Day. I don't think I ever went to a Valentine's Day party in a grade school situation. Maybe once or twice, but like most of the time I was working. So, you know, you get the work ethic going, and, you know, at some point I started my own lawn care business, and that's kind of got me into like the whole entrepreneurship.
It was all this up in Missouri, because you're from Missouri, correct?
Yeah, this happened in Missouri, yeah. So, so I think one thing my dad did that was like really valuable for me is he didn't give me any money. Like my dad, you know, he'd give me the opportunity to make money, but he never just like arbitrarily gave me money for living. You know, he just, he made me work for my money. They set up a lot of like delayed gratification where something I might want, they would buy and then they would put in storage and have me pay it off. So that got me like early on being a goal setter. And then the other thing about my dad is he bought a house, a pretty nice house actually, in my hometown, St. Joseph, Missouri, right outside of Kansas City. And on one side of me was a gentleman that owned an electrical contracting business with probably 50 trucks and doing international business in the Middle East and things like that. So no small time business. And then on the other side of us was a dental surgeon, and across the street was the president of a bank. So growing up around these type of people with no money gives you a lot of ambition, because it's right there in front of you, yet you don't have any of it, you know?
Yeah.
So it's really smart of my parents. And, you know, I think that I owe a lot of my inner drive, and I talk about that a lot in my work, to my parents, putting me in that type of situation where I saw nice things, and we had a nice house, but we didn't have the swimming pool, you know, we didn't have the boat, we didn't have the nice cars. And so like early on, it just gave me a lot of ambition to like want to be somebody and do something with my life. then it was just a matter of figuring out what that was going to be.
Yeah.
You got the ambition now. Okay, so what do you do? And then as I went along, it became very evident to me that I needed to go into sales. Because I got out of college, Garrett, and I went to work for what I thought was my dream job, which was an advertising agency in downtown Dallas. And I was like the head purchaser, and I was also like a junior account executive, which means that you work with like the artists and you work with the newspapers and the TV stations and the radio stations. You make sure everything gets delivered on time. You make sure everything's under budget and on budget. And you might have special projects that you do, but you don't make very good money. Like right out of college, this is going to seem hard to believe for most people, but I was making like $12,000 a year. And so, and I had good grades in college, but the key is that I realized I wanted to make more money. And so I was in a bar one night, and some of the people that are old time Dallas people will know this bar, but it's called the Bucky Duck. Did you ever hear of the Mucky Duck?
Yep.
Prestonwood Mall. And so I was in there one night, and I was partying with a bunch of people because I'm kind of gregarious. It's not hard for me to make friends. And so I'm in there, and one of the guys I was partying with, I was like, man, what do you do? And he's like, I sell photography. I go, you sell photography? Where do you sell photography at? He goes, I sell it right here in the mall. I go, what's that like? Like, I didn't know there was a photography studio in the mall. And he's like, yeah. He's like, I work at this place called Glamour Shots, and women come in, and we do a makeover on them, and then we sell them photography. And I was like, dude, could I do that part-time? And he's like, yeah, absolutely. Let me get you an interview. And so all that happened from just like hanging out, drinking in the bar and having a good time.
Yeah.
So that was like, that's what led me to like get into sales, is like low money and seeing like I needed to make more money. And at some point I came to the realization that I didn't want to be in purchasing. I saw the cars that the radio sales advertising guys were driving and the TV people were driving. And I'm like, it's a much nicer car than mine. And I know they're making more money than me. So it was like, I need to be in sales. And then I just needed to figure out like what sales vehicle I was going to be in. Therein lied the problem, because I had like no business contacts in DFW. None.
Yeah.
So I had to make my way. So here's how the story went. So I was working nights, doing telemarketing. And so you can picture this. I'm selling photography. I'm doing some telemarketing at night, and I'm working during the day. So I'm doing a lot. And I call this guy, and I think this was actually on a Saturday morning. I called this guy to buy a magazine from me doing telemarketing. And every time he told me no, I like just overcame the objection and went into like why he should be buying a magazine. And I did that like 5 times with him because he wasn't hanging up the phone, because I'm like, he hasn't told me no yet. I'm going to keep asking. So I kept asking, and he just stopped me. He said, John, I'm not going to buy a magazine from you, but what I want to do, I want to offer you a job. And that was my first sales job.
That's awesome. I like that. Yeah, I can relate to a lot of that, because similarly, my family, like my very young childhood, we kind of had it.
Yeah.
And then lost everything.
Oh, man.
So then it was like building back from that and watching my dad and my mom work through that and grind through that, and very much the same thing. I wanted nice things. All the kids had. Matter of fact, this exact pair of Jordans that I'm wearing right now that we're talking about it, was one of the pairs that like I wanted a pair.
Yeah.
And Dad's like, all right, well, you can go mow lawns, you can do XYZ, you have your chores, you can work on your allowance. Because even back then in the late 80s, Jordans were like $100, $125. It was no bullshit. Like, it didn't change that much.
Right.
Like, Jordans were Jordans. And,
right.
And, when you're a 9, 10-year-old kid wanting a pair of $125 Jordans, and you're worried about paying rent and everything else, how does that figure in? Like, especially when I'm outgrowing shoes like every 6 months.
Right.
So very much a similar upbringing in that, here's your thing, or, you can save for this. And I remember there was also, I was really into collecting baseball cards. So I would spend a lot of my allowance or going and working and doing yard work and stuff like that on baseball cards. And I'll never forget it. I think it was 1991 that Stadium Club put out this, like, it was the World Series Dome, I want to say Toronto or something like that, and it had this box in it, and it had all the All-Stars in it and Stadium Club's elite numbered set. It had all the guys from Team USA on it.
Right.
And this thing was like $200 back then. It's $250.
A lot of bones.
But the baseball card shop, actually, if you went up there, they would do a payment plan with you. You had to put so much down.
Right.
So then, man, I wanted to have it in my possession so bad. I was like out there just hustling and trying to sell anything I could. So man, I totally get that. But I think that's what a lot of people struggle with early on is, even once you realize that maybe sales is the route you want to go because you realize the opportunity and that it's how much you put in is what you get out, and that's up to you. That's very rewarding, and it doesn't mean you have to own or want to own and run your own business, but in the same aspect, if you want to make more, you sell more.
Right.
And I think that's a big draw to people, but I think a lot of people won't go and just figure out the basics of selling something, even though it might not be their ideal thing, until they can figure out what it is they really want to sell. Because if you get the basic and all those tactics down and you learn how to do that, and then you find something that you're also passionate about or that you can really get behind and that you truly believe in,
right,
that sells a million times easier.
Absolutely. Yeah, you got to have belief in it. And I mean, I'll drop like some of my life ideas that I've come up with over the years, but one that I'll drop right now is that sales is the hard, easy job. And when people hear that, they'll be like, no, sales is a hard job. No, sales isn't a hard job. You're not putting your life at risk. You know, being a police officer is a hard job. Being a fireman when a fire is going on, that's a hard job. Being in the Army and shooting a M16, that's a hard job. Being a doctor in the emergency room, that's a hard job. Being in sales, and the worst thing they can do to you is say no, that's an easy job.
A very easy job.
Yeah, it's a very easy job. Now, it becomes hard when you have to face your fear. And that's why I've been able to be successful, because I constantly put myself in a situation where I'm facing my fear. I'm constantly putting myself in a situation where somebody can tell me no and reject me. And that's what makes it hard. But like, you don't have to make that many sales in a day to make a great living. You don't even have to like really work that hard, but you got to work for a short period of time in fear. And most people can't do it.
What was your biggest fear in sales starting out?
Well, I'll tell you, when I very first started out, I was like a psychological mess. Like I didn't think I belonged in sales. I thought I was too smart for sales. I'm like, hey, I got this 4-year degree. I made good grades. I did everything right. I should be like CEO of this company. I should be a sales guy. I'm like, they just don't know like what I bring to the table. You know, I had just, you know, that's just kind of the way I thought. And a lot of what I teach is like how really important salespeople are. But I'll tell you, when I first got on the phone, I was working for a company out in Irving, Texas, selling industrial chemicals. And very difficult job, total cold call. Like, they didn't know me, they didn't know my product, and they didn't know my company, because the company was a startup. Now, the company that was backing us was an older company, so we had a good financial backing. But going in, like, there's 3 strikes going in. And so an incredible amount of rejection. So I took it personally. I took the rejection personally. I internalized the stress of it. And I kid you not, Garrett, I would be like on the phone, and you know, I'm doing this, but it was a headset.
Yeah, the old clanky ones.
Yeah, it was a headset. But anyway, I'll do this anyway, because that's off my book. But anyway, my arm was shaking. Like my arm, like I could not contain. My arm was shaking and my voice was vibrating. And this was like the first week. But then I started selling and it was like lifting weights. Like I got stronger and stronger and stronger. And then as I sat in the very first sales meeting, the very first week, it hit me that the kind of sales guy, if I wasn't going to be the CEO of the company starting out at age 23, the kind of sales guy that I wanted to be wasn't going to happen from the company training. And I know people will hear that and they'll think, well, that's egotistical. It was realistic. Like the guy that was training me in sales didn't really like selling. In my opinion, he wasn't really good at selling. He was the director of sales. And I know people hate hearing that. And he was a very good manager. And he was very good at like working with the corporation and everything. And he was good at hiring. And he was good at managing. But he wasn't like a good salesperson. You know, like you worked in rock music. I'm a big music guy. You got the band manager. He's got a different skill set than the lead guitarist.
Yeah, so he was in the wrong seat. He had a lot of skills that were useful, and he probably taught you well in other aspects.
Absolutely.
But when it came to actually the art of selling, I mean, I can totally relate to this. I've had many positions where that's been the case.
Yeah. So then, early on, I took it upon myself to become a student of professional sales. So back then, you'd go to the Dallas Library and you'd check out cassette tapes by Zig Ziglar. And then at some point, I wandered into a Barnes & Noble and I started seeing stuff with Tony Robbins. And I started just investing in myself, you know, investing in my clothes, investing in my shoes.
I think this is such a key point, though, that I don't want to, like, skip past this. I definitely want to hear the rest of this.
No, go ahead.
But so many people don't have the discipline or will not go that extra step because, you know, it's somebody else's fault. Like, I have a bad sales manager. I have this, I have that. Or I didn't get picked for this job or this role, and I feel like I should be here. Well, guess what? Like, it doesn't always work out like that. Like, we could both speak to having shitty people in a position above us trying to teach us sales. Well, cool. Put in the extra work. You go learn and find stuff, whether that's you reading books, finding a mentor, hiring a coach, whatever it is you have to do to put in that extra work and make yourself more valuable than them.
Absolutely. And that's what I did. I mean, I just started investing in my own time and making sure I managed my state. So I went from like having my arm shaking to just being relentless. Like I went from being a scared child to being like what I call now a sales warrior.
You read that guerrilla marketing and you went all in.
I don't even know if guerrilla marketing is out there. But I just, you know, it's something else. I'll share this story. This is going to sound funny because, like, I don't know, like a lot of people work from home these days, so they don't work in like corporate America like I did back in the day. And you had the coffee room and I didn't realize this because like my parents were kind of like blue collar business owners. They were not corporate America. None of their friends were corporate America. All their friends like owned their own business, or some of their friends were like doctors and attorneys and such. But nobody like worked for a corporation with 10,000 people or 3,000 people or anything like that I even knew outside of like people that I went to college with. But what I'll share with you is there were so many, I was so naive about like what was good for you. And this guy takes me aside one day, and I'm so glad he did, because he's like, John. And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, you cannot drink 20 cups of coffee a day. And I'm like, really? Like they have it going all day long. I didn't nobody told me you couldn't drink 20 cups of coffee. Is that why I'm so jittery and like so in everybody's face? Like I was just like a caffeine machine, man. But it was so good of him. Like he was like my big brother at the corporation. He would take me aside several times and just share like life lessons with me and tell me things that he told me one day. No, it wasn't him. It was one of the top salespeople one time told me something that just like man, it's like that Zig Ziglar thing. If somebody can see something in you you can't see in yourself, and they tell you and they verbalize it, it's the best thing that can happen to you. And his car was on the Fritz, and we were living in the same apartment, and he was the top sales guy, and I was pretty much brand new. And we're driving in, and he's like, I'm going to tell you something. And I'm like, what's that? He's going, you're going to be rich one day. And I'm like, what? He's like, I hear you on the phone every day. You're brand new. You're going to be rich one day. And man, it gives me chills thinking about it. Like, he did that for me, man. That was a gift. Like, he did not have to do that for me. He could have said, you're some dumb punk kid, and I was, but
it's amazing what a little belief and
God.
like giving that to somebody
That
does.
was so awesome. And he didn't say you're going to be good in sales, you're going to break numbers, you're going to do this, you're going to do that, you're going to get President's Club, you're going to get Gold Phone Awards, which I did. But no, he said you're going to be rich one day. And being rich one day sounded a lot better than being Salesman of the Month.
Yeah.
A
little more motivating.
Yeah. Like when he said, you're going to be rich one day, I picture my neighborhood back in St. Joe in our house, and the bank, the bank president across the street, the doctor on the right, and the dental surgeon on the left. And I'm like, I could be like one of those guys one day doing what I'm doing. Yeah, it gave me a little pep in my step. So like, encourage others. Like, there's that gold nugget right there.
Absolutely.
Others.
And if you're putting yourself out there and you're really trying, man, like, people will take notice. Like, you don't have to be the best, especially coming out the gate. That's why I think so many younger people get caught up in and just finding that thing that just comes naturally or easy. Like, any of that stuff that's really worth having doesn't.
Yeah.
So putting in that grind, and really doing it, I've been working on some stuff just from like, I tackled a fear of mine like a year ago of public speaking.
It's awesome.
And went and signed up for a course with a good friend of mine, Jay Redmond. And Jay, like, that course was really hard for me the entire time. And him and some other people there were really encouraging. They like kept trying to help me, and they kept offering great words. But I had paid and stayed to like do an extra like half day with them and really go through our final, like, we gave like a 15-minute TED talk on our final day. Yeah. And then they really broke it down to me. But the minute I was done with mine, Jay came up to me and he goes, we're going to talk tomorrow, but I know what your thing is now. He's like, that was much better than what you started out with, and that was really solid, but I know your thing. Man. And that next day, and man, I couldn't quit thinking about that all night. Yeah. That next day, though, like, when he broke that down for me, he's like, this is your thing. And now, just from him being like, hey, I saw this in you. Like corporations would pay a lot of money to have you come speak on this, and like, this is something you need to really consider.
Oh, wow.
And even then, like, it wasn't one of those things that I was just like, oh, yeah, that's me. I'm like, yeah, I get it, and I see it, and it is something I'm very passionate about.
Right.
But then all those other self-doubts creep in. Like, am I really good enough? Like, can I really speak on that? And, like, everything else? And yet here it is almost a full year later, and I'm still working on it. But I'm still putting the pieces together and still grinding at it. So, yeah, I think if you see something like that in somebody, to share that with them is one of the ultimate gifts you really could give them, because it could completely change their life.
Absolutely. I mean, I was a sales manager in my early 20s, but I also had to sell. So it's quite a stressful job. So I was still working at the industrial chemical company, still hitting my numbers, but I had like 5 people working for me. And there was always one of them that was doing so bad that you had to fire him. And I didn't, I was a part of hiring them, but, it was just a really, it's 80-20 rule. Like, you'd have some that were doing really, really well, but there'd always be that one outlier that was so bad that you had to consider firing them. And in some instances, they weren't trainable. But the other ones were fantastic. But like, finding the good in others, and I probably wasn't like HR appropriate or whatever back in the day. But I'd always try to like find something I could say to my people that was like maybe 1 or 2 words that would encourage them. Like I remember this one gal that was working for me, and she was struggling. Like her husband didn't make very much money. She was actually a waitress. Came to me as a waitress from a country club, and I'm like, I'll tell you, I can't remember her name. This was years ago, but I was like, it's like, you don't remind me of the waitress in the country club. You remind me of the member in the country club, and that's how our customers perceive you. Like, you got a really strong personality. You're really confident. You present yourself well, and she was my best producer. And I did that with each and every person. Like I would give them like who they personified, not who they were, but who I wanted them to be. But well, it's just, it's so important to encourage others.
Absolutely. Well, since and take us back to here, because $24,000 in debt, unemployed, struggling with depression. What was the turning point for you when you realized that you needed to make a change, and that's where you were at?
Yeah, all great questions. So, I mean, getting out of depression is difficult. But I think the thing that helped me the most to get out of depression was medication at the time. I can't remember what it was called, like Paxil or the other well-known one that a lot of people take. I don't take anything today, but and then two, I read this book. I think it was by a guy by the name of like Dr. John Burns, and he broke down depression in like logical sentences that I could understand. And so then I started looking at my depression as a condition, not a person. And when I started looking at it as a condition, not a person, that's when I was able to overcome it. And a combination of working out like the counseling, because I was a really like hardcore individual. Like I wanted to be like six figures at 23. And I couldn't understand, one, why I wasn't the CEO, and two, why I wasn't making six figures. I just had a really big ego and a low self-confidence, which doesn't go real well for making money. Low self-confidence, big ego, doesn't work.
That's a pretty ruthless combination.
Yeah, it is. It's not very productive. But what I realized was that the more I built myself up and worked on self-management, the better my depression situation got. And at some point, I got completely off counseling and medication. And then two, I realized from reading his book that like how I talk about how I feel determines how I feel. Like that was such a great thing to find out. And people argue with me about it because a lot of people are like, they're more like a floaty in the middle of the ocean. The waves hit and they go that way. The waves hit, they go that way. Whereas when you listen to like what your inner voice is saying to you, and you either choose to listen to it or you don't, and you can choose not to listen to it, and you can choose when you talk to somebody to talk about how you're doing in a way that makes you feel better and you can carry on. Like, we're talking about depression.
You mean not just tell somebody, it's another day in paradise and just go on about your day?
Well, here's what I learned. Like, I learned that, like, when you talk about how you're doing, the more even keel you are on the highs, the more even keel you're going to be on the lows. And I learned that, especially like when we were raising our kids. I used to tell my wife that all the time. Like if we had a weekend where we took our kids out and we went to the Plano Balloon Festival and we took them to the movies and we went and got ice cream and we did all this fun stuff. Sunday night, they were going to be crying like babies as we're putting them to bed, going to school the next day. Because we put them on a high, now
you're taking them down to the low.
Yeah, so that's a part of it, is like managing your emotions, I would call it, and how you talk about your emotions. So like if I'm talking to a client, how you doing? I'd be like, yeah, man, I'm having a great day. But if I talk to a friend, John, how you doing? I'm like, I'm fine. I'm doing fine. Like I'm not going to make how I'm feeling like a big deal, because I don't want the lows. And so I manage it with how I talk about it. if that makes sense.
No, that makes sense. I mean, I think just being real gets you so much further. I mean,
Yeah.
if you're not having a good day, man, and like you're having a conversation with somebody, you know, it's okay to share that. I mean, within reason, and to have a conversation, not just tell everybody, you know, oh yeah, everything's great, you know, living in paradise, you know, like
Well, I don't
all
say
these
that,
things.
but I'll say like, John, how you doing? I'm like, yeah, I'm having a good day. Not
Yeah.
that I'm feeling great, but I'm having a good day. Like that's a choice. Like I can have a good day,
Yeah.
whether I'm feeling good or not. So I don't really like talk to clients about what my feelings are, but I'll tell them like
Right.
what my opinion of what's going on with me is. And then I think like you take control. But the one thing I would share, and this is a gold nugget that I love to share when we talk about sales, is when a customer or a client, particularly a newer customer or client, asks you how you're doing, I'll tell you right now, they really don't care. What they're doing is they're taking your temperature to decide whether you're successful or not. And a lot of salespeople don't realize that. And they'll just say whatever. They'll be completely honest with how they're feeling. And I don't necessarily think that, you know, that's oh yeah, all good.
Your mic a little
Oh yeah, sorry.
so the people can hear you a little
Oh,
bit.
okay, yeah, sorry. So I don't think you need to show up when you talk to a customer confidently, and you got to come out. It's showtime. Like I can't just drive that home anymore. Like if you, like I'm a big rock and roll guy. You're a big rock and roll guy. You think about like stand-up comedians and things like this. This is things that people might not know, but like Robin Williams back in the day, when it was showtime, he's back in the green room. For an hour before he got on stage, he made every single person, including his agent and his wife, leave the room while he just like was by himself in complete silence before he had to hit the stage. He didn't want anybody in the room whatsoever because he was focused on state management. Like, I got to get myself in this place that I can be funny and that I can be spontaneous. And honestly, if you watch Robin Williams in his shows, he looks spontaneous. It looks like he just comes out of this stuff in midair. In reality, it's all written down. And in some instances, he stole a lot of jokes. A lot of people don't know that. But that's absolutely true. So what looks like spontaneity for a professional is really a very detailed, practiced
state of mind.
Yeah. And being like in the moment, not in the moment, but in the state, like state management. Like I'm gonna mention a couple things because I think state management and depression are really good things to talk about in sales. Because I'd mentioned this like before we got into production tonight about two guys that I worked with on a sales floor here in Dallas, Texas, who both ended up unfortunately taking their own lives. And
it's terrible.
Yeah,
to hear.
and not like just like accidentally taking too much sleeping pills or something one night accidentally, or drinking too much, or going the way of like, you know, maybe how famous like both of these individuals violently killed themselves, like put a revolver to their head and blew their brains out, both of them. And these are two people that I worked with in sales here in Dallas. And they could not manage the ups and the downs of being in a sales production environment. And that's why when we talk about like feelings and emotions and state management, and that's kind of like why I passionately went the way of talking about sales as a sales warrior, because you're going to get wounded in battle. And in sales, you mainly get wounded in battle emotionally. You don't get like hurt, you know, unless you're an outsider.
Yeah, you have a lot of ups and downs. Like, you know, you may put in a lot
and
of
maybe
time.
Maybe financial too.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
I mean, yeah, you have good quarters, good, you know, bad quarters. You have good quarters, but not paying quarters because you're waiting on stuff to close out.
Yeah.
I mean, like, it's a vicious cycle that you also have to be you have to be careful and really balance how you approach money and a lot of other things. Like, it's tough to learn. Like, I had to go through those things. I mean, I know you had you had to go through those things. I mean, every single person, and this isn't just for sales either. I mean, and then managing the highs and lows. I mean, I've been doing a lot of research because we're gonna change the formatting of this show a little bit here soon, and I've got a lot of things in the works right now for several projects. And I was listening to it was Huberman, Andrew Huberman, and Theo Vaughn.
Yeah.
And he's like Huberman's a like professor at Stanford and stuff, and in the neurophysics and stuff like that. And they were going into this in-depth discussion about dopamine and all the things that, like, where people really fuck themselves up and like they get used to all these dopamine highs. Well, and he was talking about how, like, okay, so you get that big sale and you get, like, the sale is this, and like, let's just, we'll say you got that first $1 million sale or whatever.
Right.
You got that $1 million sale. Well, and that sent your dopamine up to here a new high. Well, then everything from there was down, and then like where your natural state is. But like the next sale you get, I mean, if it was only $100,000 or something like that, I mean, which is still a really good sale, right? But like, it wasn't big, so that dopamine just stops hitting as high. So you're always chasing those highs, and like that can be applied to anything in life. So, I mean, again, if there's one thing that like just really keeps hitting, man, like for me personally, and what I want to share with the audience and these people is, if you just start incorporating more discipline in your life, like, and I don't care what you choose to be disciplined about, that sets the stage for so many other things. Like, I have never, the other day I was in the gym, and man, after that storm and stuff, I slept really good, but I did not want to get out of bed. I've taken a few days off here and there because I went out of town.
Right.
And like, it gets real easy to slip back in that old habit. But I mean, and I didn't want to go to the gym that morning, but I went. And like, as soon as I got back into the groove and stuff, man, like, I felt great. By the time I left there, I felt amazing. And I was like, yep, this is why we do it. And it's funny because one of the guys that I look up to at the gym, a guy named Hammer, this dude is like Adonis of like working out in the gym. I mean, he's like 6'5", 325 pounds. He's jacked.
Right.
And like, you don't think that guy has a bad day. I mean, he couldn't have got there if he's like having a bad day and doesn't go to the gym. And we were both joking. He's like, man, how was your workout? I was like, man, I got through it and I feel good now, but I was not feeling it today. He's like, yeah, bro, I'm not feeling it right now. That's why I'm here coming in while you're leaving. I was like, it'll change by the time you're done. He's like, that's why I'm here doing it. But people, it's funny because I was thinking about this the other day, like when you go back to like, and I don't want to get into a big debate about the school systems or anything like that, because I think our education system's fucked, but, and I don't even want to start that, but if you go back thinking about like the little things that we had to do in school, like you had to go to PT every day and do like, you had to do your fitness stuff, like, you went to gym class, and like, what'd they make you do? They made you stretch. They made you do these exercises. And while it was really basic, simple, then they made you be active, whether you were playing dodgeball or you did this and that. Like, that's setting a good standard and foundation for you. But like, every kid starts hating it because you make them do it, and then they don't see the reward, and they don't obtain that discipline. So it's like we fail very early on of like getting them to do it, and until they find something they love. Maybe they fall in love with a sport.
Right.
And I'm even reading stuff like where that's super different culturally. Biz and I are going to have to do something on this later on. I really want to pick his brain on this. We haven't even got to talk about this. But like, someone was telling me, not just recently, that we were talking about like, I know Ollie and your kids all do the football stuff. And a friend of mine has like a kid doing like 10A, real competitive football or whatever, 8A or 10A, I can't remember. Anyways, though, like, someone said in this conversation that white people send their kids to sports to learn the teamwork and the leadership skills. Black people and other cultures, they send their kids to become professional athletes, for that to be their opportunity. And then I was like, and he was talking about that, and he broke it down more. Like, I don't want to just leave it there, and like, I'm not trying to make this a racial thing or anything, but like, it's a cultural thing where the intended purpose is completely different. Whereas he's saying, you know, white people in general send their kids so that they get exercise, they can learn to play on a team, build friends, learn how to be leaders, learn those aspects of the game, where culturally in other cultures, they're not doing that. This is their chance to have success. They're pushing these kids because this is their shot to make it. This is to get out. This is to be a professional athlete.
Yeah.
And then I think that those kids only focus on that idea, and they don't focus on the other side of it. So, man, just hearing that, I was like, that is interesting to think about it from that perspective, because you're setting the ground for completely different dynamics.
Right. Yeah. And then too, along those lines, like as a parent, because I have a 24-year-old and a 21-year-old, and when they were in high school, my wife and I were like looking for them to have extracurricular activities. Why? Well, because I remember what I was like in high school, you know.
Yeah.
And you don't want them around the bad element. And if they don't have extracurricular activities, they get bored. And what do bored kids typically do? Things they shouldn't do. So being in organized anything, band, glee club, sports, wrestling, both of my kids wrestled, and one of them was in football. So important because it builds like camaraderie, but it also like puts them in a situation where they can't do bad stuff.
Yeah.
Like I remember when when the kids got to high school, my wife's like, I'm going to quit working. I'm like, quit working? What are you talking about? Like, why would you quit working now? Well, the kids aren't in daycare. They're not going to after school. So what do you think is going to happen when they come home and I'm not there? They get off at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And I'm like, you're smart. Yeah, quit working. Yeah, I remember what I was like in high school. You should quit working.
Yeah.
So that's just kind of, you know, an example. But yeah, sports is like really important. Like when I think about, and I'll just talk about it since we're talking about sales, the sports that I got to participate in and the coaches that I got to have the privilege of being coached by. I've never really been coached by a professional sales coach, in my opinion. I've sought out like well-known coaches, and I've read their books and I've listened to their tapes and their CDs and such, but I've never hired anybody to be my coach. But what I would say is that like my football coach in high school, so good for my development. My Boy Scout leaders, so good for my development.
Yeah, because you became Eagle Scout,
Yeah,
correct?
I'm an Eagle Scout, yeah.
That's
And-
a big achievement.
Oh, thanks, dude. I was a assistant scoutmaster here in Dallas for 7 years. So I used to take the kids to camp and stuff like that because, you know, just trying to give back to the community and keep these kids in a good situation. But those instances of mentorship from my football coach, my basketball coach, and just being involved in sports has helped me greatly in business and sales. Particularly like back in the days of Emmitt Smith. Like
Yeah.
I used to watch Emmitt Smith run that football down back in the day, and I used to like use the word picture of my sales day. And I'm like, my sales day is exactly like Emmitt Smith running the football. Like, I call a customer, I get thrown to the ground. I call a customer, I make a little headway. Okay, now I got a proposal. Now I'm 10 yards down. You know, I'm finally to the point where I can ask for the yes and get them invoice. I'm going to make a touchdown. And I'm like, that is so, like, in a football game, it's hard. Like, there's so much, like, battle. Like, football is a game of war. And I would say, too, that's why I came up with the idea of sales warrior. Sales is a game of war. Like people argue with me about that. They'll be like, yeah, sales is about finding people that need what you have and blah, blah, blah. And that's true. And that's very true. But the act of being able to get on the phone and get the information from them that you need to get, and vice versa, to the point where you have alignment with what they might want, is war. It's a very nuanced war where it's more like playing tennis than beating somebody into submission. Even though you hear most sales trainers and people that teach sales talk about sales like it's like you got to put them in a headlock and beat them to the ground, and they'll get up a little bit, and you just got to put them in a stronger headlock. You're just not putting them in a big enough headlock. I don't believe that at all. But I believe it's like you got a relatability, and it's very much like a finesse game. And
I agree with that 100%.
Yeah,
I mean, I think it varies depending on what you're selling to a certain degree.
right.
But yes, it is about the networking, the building the relationship, the connecting, the bridging, and yet at the end of the day, being able to solve a problem for them or provide the solution to them.
Well, and you hear this, Garrett, and I think about this a lot, is that people believe that proximity is rapport. Like they believe that, oh, he goes to my church. That's rapport. And to an extent, that's rapport, but that's not necessarily relatability.
True.
And what do I mean by that? I have sold stuff to so many people that could buy the same exact thing that I am selling a half a block from where they live. But they buy it from me. Why do they buy it from me? Because I'm easy to do business with and they like me. And it's as simple as that. And it's wild that people don't understand that. You know what I'm saying? Like people think of proximity as being rapport. And I thought about this today, but think of all the people that are married that are living in the same house that hate each other. You know? Like,
Yeah.
So proximity is not rapport. In some instances, proximity can be hate. Like I can't stand that person. If I have to see that person one more time, and I'm sure the hell not going to buy anything from them.
And just because you went to the dance doesn't mean you got to dance.
Yes,
you know?
yes, thank you. I hear that all the, I think about that a lot though, because people don't talk to people, people talk at people. And that's unfortunate. People really, the idea, like this is called common sense, the idea of making a true connection, a relatability to the point where you're their person, you're their trusted person, that's rapport.
Yeah.
That's a business relationship.
You can also
trust.
participate without providing any value. And I think a lot of people, especially in the younger generation, they think just because they're participating or they're going through the motions,
right,
that's supposed to equal the sale or the relationship. And they don't take that any further and actually provide any value. Like, I mean, you can show up all day long, but I mean, that's not all there is to it. You know, you can participate without providing value.
That's right. And in I don't know, this is just an example, but like over the years since I've been in it so long, I've been in situations where they say, okay, we're going to take your top, we're going to take like 30 people and just give them to somebody else. We're going to just take 30 of your businesses that you're selling to, and we're going to give it to like a struggling salesperson because you're really good at getting new clients. We're not worried about you, John. We know you'll just get on the phone and send some emails and you'll have business. We're not worried about you, John.
Yeah.
I've heard that the whole time that I've been in sales. But I've always fought that. I've always fought like getting a house account or having anything taken away from me. It just goes against my entrepreneurial spirit. But here's what I'll tell you, is those same people and or businesses that they've taken away from me, when they need something, you know who they call?
Yeah, they
Me.
still call you.
And then I tell them, I'm sorry, you're no longer my customer. Did you get the email? Did you get the letter in the mail? You're our person. You're our guy. And I'm like, that makes me feel so good. Like, I'm like, even, this day and age where you don't always have control over your destiny, the man upstairs has control over your destiny. You know, what's on a written document isn't necessarily law. It's that personal connection. Like we're touting AI so much and the use of computers, and it's not that I don't believe in it, but at the end of the day, it's that personal connection.
Yeah.
You know, girls and guys don't go dating somebody they don't have a personal connection with. You know, not for long anyway.
Yeah.
Maybe a short period of time.
That scenario doesn't bother me as much as I've literally had people in positions above me that have, to serve their own ego, have stripped away or passed clients around to try to like serve other goods. And you know, that's uncalled for, and that's a whole nother scenario. But I mean, yeah, to constantly be like, you're the one bringing them in, but we're going to, you know, now that you've got them in here, we're just going to hand that off. Now, so-and-so that's not real good at building rapport and bringing them in, we're just going to let them manage that account. Well, you know, you're giving a short life to that account now, because the chances of them being able to build the rapport that you had already built with them are slim to none. Yep. It's one of the things I don't understand with some of my other close family and friends that have similar sales jobs as well. Yeah. Like, you know, I don't want to say any names in case any of these people are watching or whatnot, but someone really close to me, his accounts change within the company he works for almost yearly. Okay. Like, he'll be working on these set accounts for X amount of time, and he'll get them, you know, where they need to be, or where they're really closing the deal or whatnot. And then there's a reorg. And then they'll reorg and then like kind of like switch the accounts. And now he has these other, and I mean, these are big accounts. I mean, I'm talking the big brands that we all know, we all shop at and stuff like that. Yeah. And then he's got to go like do that all over again. And it's like, why would you spend that much money and time and training and effort with a major account like that, only to completely switch it up on him again? You know, like, I mean, and it seems like from my experience of watching this year in and year out, that this happens almost every like 12 to 16 months with them. Yeah. That's a strange model for me. I don't know that I could operate well in that environment.
I think that's why a lot of salespeople become entrepreneurial type gigs where they have less of that. But yeah, no, I hear you. I mean, that's got to be one of the hardest things in business. But in sales and in life, all you can do is control what you can control, and it's the variables that you can control.
Well, on that note, I mean, you've been doing this for over 3 decades now. So what are the most important sales tactics or strategies that you've perfected over the years?
You know, I think I've become like a subject matter expert at developing rapport. And two, at some point, I no longer sold products or services. At some point, I sold myself and the relationship. And when I talked about the products and services, I'm just talking about the benefits and how it resonates with them. And I'll get really detailed on the benefits. Yeah. And I won't even name what product it is. And what's so cool about it, when you so focus on the benefits, you get people that like refer you to other people naming the product you sell, not by what it is, but what it does. And they'll say, hey, John, that such and so you told me about, one of my friends at the country club wants that. Here's his name and his phone number, call him up. And he's not calling it by the product. Like most salespeople think they sell products. You don't sell products, you sell solutions to problems. And the more you get yourself to that point, but getting back to like mastering rapport, because that's kind of how I kicked it off. I think the fact that in sales you face so much rejection and boredom. I'll just be honest. 70,000 hours is how long I've been selling. 70,000 hours. I read where to become an expert at anything, you have to have done it for 10,000 hours. I've done 7 times that. So 70,000 hours. I figured it out one day that I've been professional selling.
7 times champion.
Yes. So anyway, how you perfect rapport is you got to be well-rounded and you got to be well-read. Because when you're talking to somebody, you got to have relatability. Like as you and I've been chatting, we find out we know people in common. Like we talked about, like I work with Operation Rock the Troops. I'm on not their board, but I'm a heavy volunteer of Operation Rock the Troops with Matthew, JC, and JC All Stars.
Great guys. I went to high school with a lot of those guys.
So as we talk about, you and I are talking more, we're probably going to find more people that we know in common.
Absolutely.
So, getting out and about and finding out about things in your world is helpful with rapport. Being well-read is extremely helpful in rapport. I mean, I can think of times like over the years where I'm talking to somebody and you ask the question behind the question. Because most people, they think about proximity and then they stick it there. Like, oh, you live in Tyler, Texas. And then they just start talking about Tyler, Texas and what they know about Tyler, Texas.
Yeah.
It might not even be important to the person. Like Tyler, Texas might be a place that they just ended up. People are just assuming that since you live in Tyler, Texas, you might be from there. And that's the problem. Most salespeople, they're so focused on selling, they don't dig more. And rapport comes from digging more. Yes, you dig more. I mean, like I'll give an example because we're both in Apex and Ryan Stewman's 45 years old.
Yeah.
And so he was born like, I don't have the math.
We're the same age.
Like 80, 81?
80.
80? Okay, so he was born in 80. So you are at the top end of, you're like the youngest Generation X.
Yeah.
Right? I'm the oldest Generation
Did
X.
you hear that? Wait, damn it. And my wife ain't logged on right now. I need that. Yeah, we're going to have to clip that shit. She always, she gets mad because they keep changing the ages and stuff. She's 82.
Oh, okay.
So she gets mad that they make her a millennial.
Where does it start?
That, according to the internet, the great World Wide Web, Generation X is 1965 to 1980. So I do not fall in with the millennials, and I love that.
Yeah,
it's gonna drive my wife crazy.
And so I was born in 66, so I'm like really close to being a baby boomer.
Yeah.
And so I got a lot of, like, as I was a kid, I used to hang out with, like, my brother's friends who were 4 years older than me. So I always hung out with baby boomers, too. So, like, I always, like, listened to Led Zeppelin and all that stuff. And, but a part of rapport is asking the question behind the question. So you're talking to somebody in Tyler, and so you drill down a little bit. So are you originally from Tyler? No. Where are you originally from? I'm originally from Austin. And then it hits you. This guy's originally from Austin. You look at their age and you think, And then you ask the question, did you ever get a chance to see Stevie Ray Vaughan play in one of the bars in Austin back in the day?
Yeah.
And then they're like, I actually had dinner with Stevie Ray Vaughan in Austin one night. And then you got like chills. And now it's like, you got rapport. You got relatability. And then like most salespeople will leave it there. They'll just like leave it there. Okay, I found this out about them. But no, then you got to tie it up. And how do you tie it up? You tie it up by saying, I am a huge Stevie Ray Vaughan fan in Double Trouble. In fact, I saw Stevie Ray Vaughan in 1989 at the Cotton Bowl, like a few months before he died. Like I was one of the last people to see Stevie Ray Vaughan in Double Trouble live. And they opened for The Who in 1989. And they're like, really, I saw that concert in Austin. Well, now we've both seen the same concert. And in the beginning, we were strangers. Like this was kind of a cold call that became an appointment. But like that's how you become a master at rapport. You got to be well read. You got to know things.
Well, and I think it's a big part of the listening, like,
and you got to listen,
really truly listening to them. Because I had this conversation, and I'll use this example.
Yeah,
I'll make one. Let's see.
Okay.
I had a sales guy that I kept noticing this pattern. It's kind of like what you were just saying, where he was out really trying to sell and hustle, and we're at these different networking events and stuff, and he kept stealing the prospective client's thunder. Like, that was like issue number one. Like, they would tell him something or try to be relatable, and he was like Johnny one-upping them. And the example I gave, and like when I tried to sit him down and like coach him a little bit and like have a conversation with him was, okay, so let's just pretend that you just went up to so-and-so, this lady that is in the industry, you're wanting to get business with them, and one of the first things she tells you about when you're breaking ice with her and you're just trying to find out a little bit about her and get to know her was that she just had twins. Regardless of you have twins, and we're going to pretend you also have twins, that you don't immediately turn around and go, oh my God, I have twins too. Like, that's not how you start doing this.
No,
I was like, no.
So true.
You turn it back around and you're like, wow, you have twins. How do you do your job and chase two little ones around? That has to be so hard to be able to like manage the house and you're still doing all this in the business, and let them keep talking about themselves. Like, you keep feeding that back to them.
Yes, absolutely.
Don't immediately take what they gave you and put it back on you. You know, regardless of if you have twins.
Yes.
You know, because eventually when you keep this going and you get that conversation really going, they're going to get excited, and then they're going to want to know more about you. And then they'll go, well, what about you? Do you have kids? Actually, matter of fact, I do, and I have twins. That's when you say that, if that's like what the scenario is. But like, you don't just come back and forth with this like it's a one up the ladder game.
Thank you.
And this person just really did not understand that. Like, it was all about name dropping and I did this and I did that. And I was like, dude, it's not about you. It's them. They're not trying to buy you.
Yes.
You're trying to get their business.
Yes. Thank you.
That shit drives me insane.
I love it though that like you keyed in on that. I mean, that is fantastic. Like, people want to be seen and heard, and like one of the things I teach is like when you're talking to somebody, even if you aren't face to face, because I've done both face to face sales and over the phone sales, but you got to let them know like what they're telling you as you get into like their actual problem that they're talking to you about. You got to take notes. Like, you got to take notes. Like, most people are like a waiter that wants to prove to you how smart they are, that I'm just going to
remember your whole order.
Okay, you need a twice baked potato, you needed a rice pilaf, you needed this, you needed that, blah, blah, blah. Okay, I'm a genius. I just memorized all that. No, you're an idiot, because the human brain can only keep 7 pieces of random information at a time. So if you just took in 9 pieces of information, you're going to have to commit 2 of those pieces of information to long-term memory. The likelihood that you're going to regurgitate that correctly once you get back there and you say hi to Bob and high-five him because he just got a 10 top and he's made a great big tip. Now you've forgot those 2 things, and now you're going to get a bad tip yourself. So yes, write it down, people, and explain to people you're writing it down. And why do you do that? Even if you got a photographic memory, you do that because it shows you care. Like what you're saying about like spending time talking about her twins, and that you care about like that she's like doing all she's doing and spinning all these plates, and that's important. People want to feel important, and it doesn't matter that you're important. It's a matter that you're credible, but you don't have to be important.
Well, and I think so many people try to go in for the kill and the sell then. Like, that first call or that first meeting is not the straight pitch. Like, it shouldn't be. I mean, like, there's not a lot of instances where it should be. I mean, I know there are some, and it depends on how your lead's coming in and what your type of lead is. I do get that. But if you're at I'll say this, if you're at a networking event, you are not getting the sale at the networking event. Like, that is not what that's for.
Unless they're just in a ton of pain.
Yeah, I mean, like, I'm sure there are some scenarios and someone's going to prove me wrong on here. But in general, if you're, especially in my industry, if you're at a networking event, you know, multifamily construction, if you're at a networking event or you're at an association event, any of those things, you're not getting the sale when you first get this introduction or meet this person, your only goal should be to make a true connection, to really get to know somebody. Because if you can start down that path, because then the next time you see them at something, and then you can follow back up with them like, well, hey, you told me you were going to Italy with your wife, you know, like after I saw you last time, like, what was that like? Tell me about it. I mean, I've always wanted to go, like, and you just keep building that rapport. Like, eventually that turns into you having a relationship and them calling upon you to do business. But I can't stand to go to watch. I mean, it's like worse than going and watching like a 7th grade dance where you're like afraid to get off the wall and ask the girl to dance. Like
Right.
when these guys, like guys and girls, go to these networking events and they're just like so up someone's ass and just like hardcore going at them, and I'm watching them just trying to back themselves out of a corner or out of the conversation. You're like, man, like that dude's not, that he or she is not going to last long in whatever they are trying to sell.
Absolutely. I mean, and people are judgmental of you. Like when you're in a networking event, all they're thinking to themselves is, do I like that person? That's all they're thinking to themselves.
Yeah.
It's real similar to speed dating. Like, you know, like back in the day, I mean, I've been married 31 years, so I haven't speed dated in a while, you know,
Right.
that I can remember. No.
Well, we have events like that that are essentially speed dating
Yeah.
with customers. I mean,
Yeah.
there's networking events that are like that.
But people, like, when you are going through that, people are thinking, do I like that person?
Yeah.
They are thinking that.
Do I want to meet them?
That's the first thing.
Do
Like,
I want to get to know them?
yeah, do I like that person? Because honestly, this is going to, like, for a lot of people that think they sell something very unique, it's probably going to put a big damper in their chili, what have you. But what you sell is not unique. Like, it's highly unlikely that what you sell is unique. Most of the things that I've ever been involved in are not unique at all. They could get it, like I said, a block away from where they live if they really wanted to. Especially with ChatGPT.
Yeah,
right?
you get it
they can just
online now.
look
You
it
don't
up
even have
or,
to leave the house.
Google it. So they don't need to work with me. They want to work with me because people like working with people, and that's
absolutely.
lost on so many people. Like, people think that people buy from companies. People buy from other people.
Absolutely. I want you to talk to me about something.
Go
'Cause
ahead.
You had a post recently that really caught my attention. And
Okay.
I want to know where you were going with this, and I want to know your thoughts on it.
Okay.
And your post basically was talking about the art of leaving a message.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that, and kind of explain us what was behind
Well,
that post?
so-
Because I think that is there is an art to that, and you and I kind of had a little good going back and forth today too about our thoughts and my thoughts about when is it appropriate to not just pick up the phone or go have the in-person meeting. When can you actually send a text? When can you send an email? And I think millennials and beyond have a really bad habit of this, that if it is a difficult conversation or a hard conversation, for whatever reason, they do not want to pick up the phone and have said hard conversation,
Yeah.
or go meet with the person in person. They think it is okay, and that they are like Nobel Prize winners of putting emotion and reflection into text messages and emails, and then they're completely beside themselves when whatever they said in email or text was taken wrong, taken out of context, or the person's actually pissed that you didn't just pick up the phone and call them or come and talk to them.
I mean, to me, like, the way I sell is very, like, systematic and emotional. And what I mean by systematic is, like, so Zig Ziglar years ago came up with this whole idea of 5 impressions before you make a sell. And a lot of times you hear, like, you have to have X amount of meetings before somebody will do business with you. Well, when I leave a voicemail, depending upon, like, where we are in the sales cycle, I see the voicemail as an impression and possibly a meeting substitute. So I'm not afraid to start a conversation that's actually more conversational on a voicemail that leads to the sale and creates curiosity.
Yeah.
There's two things you can do with a voicemail. One is you can increase curiosity, which I think is huge because it increases interest, because people are curious about what they don't know about. Sorry. Yeah. So people are curious about what they don't know about. And so that's good. I used to do that a lot in IT sales. And then two, the great thing about a voicemail, Garrett, is they can't interrupt you. So you get to give a message to somebody exactly how you want it. And you can actually, depending upon like where it's at, you can ask for the business in that. If you know what you're doing and you're confident. And like I always like few things that are like golden in my mind. It's 5 impressions before you make a sell. They gotta like you, and you gotta thread the needle. And in these day and age, when I say thread the needle, probably somebody younger than me doesn't know what I'm talking about, because you don't really thread needles anymore. So I also use the term like in the pickup truck where you have the great big backup camera. You got to stick that truck in between the lines. Like what you're presenting to the customer in terms of a proposal has to align with what they want. Like they've told you their problem at their company, what they're trying to solve. You've presented the proposal, you put it between the lines. And if you put it between the lines and it's in budget, they should buy. There's no reason why they shouldn't buy. But that's just like, the phone in my mind is like the best tool that I have, because
how did you really master that art of leaving a message? Because that's a hard one to gauge your feedback loop on, like remembering exactly what you said on the message, if this is a voice message.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, obviously it's easy to keep track of, did they call you back or did they not call you back? Did you get the sale? Did you not get the sale? But like, how did you really go through that process and figure out what really was working in doing that? Because I could see that being a little challenging. I would. Well,
maybe so, but here's one thing I've also learned in sales is a salesperson tends to do, and I just want to call them like sales warriors, because I don't like calling people sales warriors. I think that downplays the job. Like, you're a warrior, you're out there, you're trying to bring business in, you're like frontline, you're extremely important to the business being successful or not. There's no such thing as business without sales. So you can have a CEO and a president and a principal. No sales, no business. You don't have a business. All you have is a great marketing organization and information. You're giving out information to a lot of people and nobody's buying. That's not business. So from a psychological standpoint, how did I master it? I just thought of it systematically. It's an impression. Like, I want to make a positive impression on this individual. So let's break it down to dating, because that's helpful. So I met this gal, and we exchanged phone numbers. We went out on one date, wait a couple days, call back. Hey, Sally, I had a really good time on that first date. I've been thinking about you a bit, and there's this new Tom Cruise movie that came out, and I've been really wanting to watch it. I think I'm going to get me some tickets on Saturday. Just wondering if you'd like to go too. That's just, kind of an example. Like, it's a third impression, and yes or no. Call me back. Yeah, John, sounds great. I've been wanting to go to that movie too. No harm, no foul. And that's just kind of how I see it. It's another impression. It's not an email. It's a voicemail. And with a voicemail, you can use voice inflectuation, which I think is so important, because you can emotionally talk to somebody. You can talk to somebody factually, and all that speaks to is their logical mind. But when you speak to somebody emotionally with inflection, it talks to their emotional brain. And when you talk to somebody, because they always say that people buy on emotion and they back it up with logic later. Have you heard that before?
Yeah, and it also kind of sounds like a story to solution as well to me.
I teach that. I said that the other day on one of my posts. I said, like most salespeople, they want to tell you, I sell cars. Yeah, you could buy a car from anybody. What you sell is you sell reliable transportation, and if you're doing a better job than that, you're selling a good feeling of being in a car that they can brag about to their friends. Like, that's really what you're selling, is you're selling like advancement in life. Like, you're no longer driving that old beat up car, you're driving this brand new car with all these brand new electronics on it, man. You're like, you're moving up in the world. Like, you're leveling up. Look at you.
Yeah.
Like, let me hook up that Apple talk in there. You know, like
I think that's a big key point there too, because I think the car was a great example, because you have to make, and everybody's on different playing fields, right?
That's
like,
true.
If we're looking at the car dealership,
Yeah.
like, you could simplify this just like to the Ford dealership. So at the Ford, you have your, you know, your very base models, but it might be brand new and decked out, and that base model has all the bells and whistles of that model.
Right.
And then you have the F-150, the F-250,
Yeah.
the F-150 Raptor, the F-150 Raptor R.
Right.
You know, you could send it to Shelby. You could do all these different things.
Yes.
But you, as the salesperson, have to recognize the level that the person is coming in on and where they're trying to go. And if you can bridge that gap, or if you have to just, you know, sell them on what is in their wheelhouse without putting them in a financial burden,
Yeah.
and still keeping it work for them, but still pitching that model, you just got everything that you could possibly get in that F-150.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a platinum, it's this and that, you know, you got the King Ranch edition, you know. Like, I know you really wanted that Ford Raptor, and maybe that's what we work towards, but this is going to hold its value. This has all the same features. I mean, really all you're losing here is a little bit of horsepower and, you know, an independent suspension. I mean, I get it looks wise and stuff, but like, you have, and actually, and you know, the Raptor doesn't even come with some of these features because they've eliminated these from this, you know, this option.
And some of those features aren't important to that individual.
To figure out what things are important to them on the level that they're coming in at, and where they're trying to go, I think is critical there.
Absolutely. And that's why getting out the yellow pad, either on the phone or in person, and writing down what somebody wants is so pertinent, because most people try to find like 8 things that somebody wants or 5 things that somebody wants, but in reality, it might be one thing that they want. And I'll use Apex as an example, because the guy that sold me Apex didn't sell me Apex like the way I would have thought I could have been sold Apex. Like,
I agree with this 100%.
You too?
I can do this. I got on in the period where, well, my first experiences were with the group that got ousted, that he exited and got rid of. And then the second
and I love
round,
Apex. I'm not saying anything against Apex.
Everybody knows I like Ryan Stewman, and I like what's going on at Apex.
I do too. I mean, I'm so
Ryan
impressed
sat
with
right in that chair, and we
everything that he does. But what I would say is that, just analytically speaking, being in sales for 3 decades, there was one reason I wanted to get in Apex, and there was one reason I was going to spend the money to get in Apex, and it had almost nothing to do with building a business. And that might sound strange to a lot of people, because Apex is an organization that helps you with like your social media and being able to build a brand and having, but what I was interested in is I'm approaching 60 and I'm kind of like financially independent, so I don't need a lot of money really. And I don't need to build a business. If I build a business, it's because I'm bored and I'm goal oriented and it's a game. But the reason I wanted to join Apex was the camaraderie, because like most of my life, like my wife and our friends are like computer programmers, accountants, analysts of some type, not salespeople.
Yeah.
So like I haven't had a lot of like sales friends, and it's hard to be in sales when you don't have friends, and it's hard to like be in life when you don't have things that are like people that you can relate to. And that's why I wanted to join Apex. I'm like, good God, it's 4 miles from my house. I'm sure there's a lot of business owners that are salespeople, sales background, what have
so
you.
let me ask you this.
Yeah.
How do you plan on adapting? Is like there's not going to be many more live events at Apex. It's going to be pretty much through the web channels, through the training platforms and all that. Is that going to change your...
Well, I got a lifetime membership, so it's not going to...
Same here. I'm just curious, but since that was your mission...
Well, like you and I met through the channels. I'm sure there'll be some happy hours and things like that. Like Dave Brown has put together some good stuff. Dave Brown's one of my good friends that I met through Apex.
I look forward to meeting him. I don't know.
He'd be great on your show too.
My joining Apex was twofold.
Yeah.
One, it was to network and be around more like-minded individuals and people that I could learn from that were entrepreneurs, that were building businesses and whatnot. The second thing was all of the AI platforms that Ryan has rolled out. I have many uses for those. And to also have the training that comes with those.
Oh, it's huge.
On mastering those. And then the third and probably the most important thing, aside from the network to me, was since taking on this podcast and working on my second podcast, you think you know a lot about social media and how this shit works, and then when you really start doing it and you really start trying to break down analytics and understanding what's working, what's not working, you realize, holy shit, this is why people have entire degrees in this stuff.
Oh yeah.
Like, I know jack shit about this. Like, they do an update and it rocks my world. Like, I can't figure out why I can no longer just find this here or there. And it drives me nuts. And I was seeing what they were doing, and what Ryan was doing was sales funnels. And while I don't necessarily have something, or didn't at the moment, that I thought was like a direct thing, like I wasn't selling this gadget on Common Sense, and I wanted to create this landing page for people to get this gadget, or if they liked it or clicked on it, that I wanted that information and I wanted to capture it. But I saw where I could use it for other things.
Absolutely.
So that was why I joined when I joined, was to take advantage of those three things.
Absolutely. Well, and there's still the camaraderie, even if it's at present electronic. But the key is like we're talking about like a sales call, and that individual could have closed me on just the camaraderie. Oh, John, we have this event, that event. Okay, where do I sign up? That's why I wanted to join, was the camaraderie. I did start my own business, but I didn't need to start my own business. I feel like God wanted me to start the business. That's why I started it. Like during COVID is when I started my business, and I was bored, and I was creative, and I took some online classes before Apex or whatever, and I just started building a podcast myself, and then I wrote a book, and then
is that what made you write the book?
Yeah, well, okay, so what made me write the book, and I have no problem at all telling people this, is at the time, I guess my son was like 19 years old. He had just graduated high school, and I walked in his bedroom and I looked at like the books he was buying and the books that I had given him to read, and I'd given him like See You at the Top.
Another Zig Ziglar.
Yeah, Zig Ziglar book. I gave him the Tony Robbins book that I absolutely loved. I gave him like Power of Positive Thinking, Dr. Norman Benson Peale. I'd given him all these great books, and then he went out and he bought Jordan Belfort, The Way of the Wolf. And man, I just had a huge issue with that. And it had nothing at all to do with the fact that he'd been incarcerated. That wasn't my issue at all. My issue was that he was a crook. And in my opinion, he was a crook. And I'll tell him that. He can sue me. I mean, it's well documented that he's a crook.
Yeah.
And my young son, who I'd held as a little baby back in the day down the road on Central Expressway when he was first born in the hospital, and held him. And I'm like, he's reading that book and he thinks that guy is successful because they did a movie about him. But the only reason he's out of jail is because he gave up state's evidence and he gave up his partners. And I'm like, I'm a successful sales guy, and I'm an honest guy.
Yeah.
And I'm going to write a sales book. Like the day I saw that, I'm like, I'm writing a sales book. And I didn't know how to do it or anything, but I just took out my laptop computer and I wrote a chapter, like a chapter a night for like however long it took me to do 17 chapters. I'm like, what should a sales book have in it? And at first I got out a piece of paper and I wrote down like everything that I thought was missing in any kind of like sales training I'd ever had, and things that I knew that I'd never heard in any sales training. And I just matched what was in that chapter heading to a whole chapter. And I put in my own like personal examples, real world examples of it, so people could see, you know, what I was saying and needed to be said. And quite honestly, like, I don't think salespeople really need new tactics. I think salespeople need new attitudes and new inspiration. Like that's truly, I think, what drove me and why God wanted me even involved in sales training is like inspiration. Because Zig Ziglar passed away. Tony Robbins is an amazing guy, and Ryan's great too. I mean, amazing. But I didn't think, like, I've never spent my life in management. I do manage a few people these days, but I spent my life in sales and being under a sales number and blowing out sales numbers like year after year after year after year at every organization I've ever been at. And how I did it was concentrating on the people I was trying to help and not being afraid to ask for the business, and not being afraid to leave, like you're saying, these messages. I just left a message for somebody the other day where I basically told him, like, okay, here's what I'm seeing. I'm seeing this, 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 and this. I think you should do this, this, and this. Here's my number. Like I told him, like, here's the recipe, you know, we're backing that truck into those lines and you should be calling me because of this. So, but that's what like got me fired up.
Thank you. Would you like another?
I'm good. Thank you, though. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, Hannah.
Yeah, thanks, Hannah. So, but that's kind of what got me fired up, man. It's that, like, you talk about these instances in your life, like these points of, like, I can picture myself in my son's bedroom right now. Now it's all cleared out because he has his own place and he's out of the house.
Yeah.
We're getting ready to, like, put my grandson in there when he comes over for play days, you know, so things have changed. But back then, I mean, just seeing that book just got me fired up, pissed off.
That's funny. That,
like really,
that
like
the catalyst.
Really pissed off.
Had you ever thought about writing a book?
I had, because I had read some. Another reason why I like had in the back of my mind I should write a book is I've read like a lot of bad, what I would call bad sales books, and just bad books in general, like positive motivational books that I thought were bad. And so that
There's plenty of them out there.
I mean, I'm a reader, so I might even understate how many books I've read. But I've read so many books, and so I'm reading Bill Gates' book right now, which is actually like really good.
Which one?
The one he just came out with, his autobiography that he actually wrote.
Oh, okay.
And I'm 6 chapters in, and guess how? Okay, here's a question, Garrett. I'm 6 chapters into Bill Gates' book. How old is he?
At 6 chapters in, how old is he?
Yeah, 6 chapters into an autobiography. How old do you think Bill Gates is at this point?
I'm going to go 16.
Oh, wow, you're good. He is in middle school. He's about 13. 6 chapters in.
He's a little long-winded. Like, he likes
he's in
to
middle
talk.
School. But I'm kind of glad, because the way an autobiography or a biography works is like when you're 6 chapters in, you're already talking about it being a multimillionaire. It's not as interesting. And he's still in middle school. And what's so interesting about Bill Gates' book is the things that happened in my life that got me to where I wanted to go, the things that happened in Bill's life that were so instrumental to him creating Microsoft.
Yeah.
Like,
And that probably wasn't real fair either, because I have an earlier book.
Okay.
And I don't know if it was an autobiography or just a biography. I don't know.
Yeah.
But it's a big part of his story.
Yeah.
And I remember it being, it's not as big as the Steve Jobs book.
I read that the whole thing,
brutal.
550 pages.
Yeah, that's a big book.
Yeah.
I read that too. I didn't read the whole thing. I finally got bored at a certain point.
Okay.
And I put it down. But the Bill Gates one that I read,
Yeah.
it was literally like that. I don't think it was 6 chapters, but it was like 2 or 3 chapters, and we're still talking about childhood. And like we're just getting into like high school, early college, and what he's into, and where everything starts kicking off. And then it was like warp speed, but because I think this book that I read was written in probably like the early 2000s.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, that's
so not
interesting.
As much had happened. I mean,
Yeah.
a lot had happened, but not as much as like writing one now.
Yeah, and what's wild is like I'm real extrovert, like you can probably see that, but I'm also like real introvert, which is interesting. Like if I had to, I could spend like 2 weeks at my lake house just reading books, and I'd be perfectly happy, just like hanging out, reading books that I wanted to read, and just
I go through periods where
Do you
like
too? Yeah.
when I'm like really in the zone and I'm in my head,
Yeah.
and I'm wanting to like learn things or I'm working on things,
Yeah.
but I can only go so long without really feeling like I'm getting out in the world and really interacting. Whether that's
It's like the two.
whether that's
Yeah.
going out with my wife, whether
Yeah.
that's going out with my friends, whether that's going to a music show or something.
Yeah.
Like, I can't, like, COVID was terrible for me. Like, telling me I had to stay somewhere and that I couldn't do anything.
Right.
Even though I was considered an essential worker, that drove me nuts.
Yeah, I hear you.
So what are maybe some of your favorite books that you've read, like especially maybe more geared towards sales or personal growth type things?
Well, if I had to think of like a really good book on sales, it'd be Tom Hopkins' book. Like that really changed my lane. Tom Hopkins. So I'm trying to remember like what his book is called, but it's an intriguing book because it talks about the language of sales versus just the process of sales.
Okay.
And the language of sales I thought was like really strong with Tom because he's all about the minor yes, like gaining agreement and asking for the yeses, but not actually immediately asking for the sale. Like you're talking about these hungry salespeople that always like,
yeah,
look, and with him, it was all about like getting agreement, getting the minor, and also like downplaying it, like.
Sounds a lot like Chris Voss, like never
maybe
splitting the
so,
difference.
and Chris Voss might play off him, but it's like I have a lot of people that are happily involved with me. Like that's an example of a Tom Hopkins quote. I have a lot of people that buy from me. I don't sell to anybody, but I got a lot of people that buy from me. And Tom was always like, nobody wants to be sold, but everybody likes to buy.
Yeah.
And it's just like all the language made me consider what I was saying. And I think it might have been Tom Hopkins because we talked about this earlier, but it's worth mentioning, like with your guy, when he's immediately wanting to tell about his twins, because I see that with the younger generation, like if they have kids, they don't care. They got to tell you about their kids, even though it might or might not be relevant. And in reality, it fights against rapport, and but an example would be as he's talking to people, the relatability and the use of the language to get them to talk, I think is like really important. And one thing he said was, don't say the word I or me when you're talking. Like, try to get that out of the conversation. And back in the day when I was doing industrial chemicals, I had a little card on my computer. And back then, like I'm old school, I'm almost 60. So I had a little card on my mainframe dumb terminal I didn't have like a CRM to put all the notes in.
Yeah.
We had like one little line of text that we could put in that was like a green screen about she has a cat and it's named Tom. Like that's about it, like in the whole thing. So you're very limited in terms of like you had to memorize almost at that point. But by not saying the word I and me got me to focus on them and what was important to them. And people don't want to hear in the beginning when you're developing a business relationship, people don't want to hear about you. They don't even know if they're going to be doing business with you. So why would they want to hear about you? It's kind of like speed dating, getting back to like dating a girl or whatever. Like if she doesn't really want to date you, she probably doesn't want to know like what you were like in high school because she probably doesn't want to ever see you again, right? So in the beginning, it's surface information. And then maybe it goes a step further, and maybe it doesn't go a step further. But the more you talk about them, everybody likes somebody that's interested in them. And I didn't realize this until like later in life. But
there's also an art in that too.
You know, when I was in college, I was in a fraternity, and they made us do something. It was so powerful. They made us get a notebook. In that were you in a fraternity too?
No,
okay.
I'm just thinking of a story my dad told me about.
Okay. So we had 80 guys in our fraternity, right? 80 guys. They made us get a notebook, and they made us go up to every single active member and write down their name, their full name, the town they're from, and their major, and focus on them. And then we were tested on every active member's full name spelled correctly, the town that they lived in, and their major. And it sounds silly. Like a lot of things they make you do in life sound silly. But a lot of times when you were doing that with people, a conversation started. Just like as you're talking to a customer, a conversation started. Like you get that, like when I was in IT, it was like, well, tell me how many computers you have. Well, how many servers do you have? Well, how many switches do you have? Where did you go to college? You know what I'm saying? Like it's all surface level stuff. And then it comes back, well, John, where are you from? How long have you been with the company? And now it's a tennis match. You know, now it's a tennis volley versus a beatdown. And now it's the beginning of rapport and relatability. But it was so huge what they had us do, because those relationships now, almost 40 years later, when I go back for alumni events, I kind of remember what those guys were majoring in. Yeah. And now, okay, you're an electrical engineer. Now you're working for Sprint. You know, that it all comes back to, I think, weren't you? And we had like the guys, like I went to the University of Missouri, so we had guys that were from St. Louis. We had guys from Kansas City. We had guys from all the surrounding towns. And you would, for whatever reason, you'd remember the guys that were from these small little towns, like little towns, like 6,000 people. You'd be like, it's like, Bob, aren't you from Poplar Bluff? And he's like, yeah. And how do I know that? From being a pledge and writing it down. And that's why, you know, some of the things that we're told to do as children or underlings or whatever, pledges and fraternities or new salespeople or whatever, are important. And that's kind of an example, but just like.
No, it's a great one. I mean, it even made me chuckle because it reminded me of a story my dad told me.
Oh, okay.
And it's almost the exact same story, and that's why I was laughing. I was like, wondering
really?
because it was very similar. Yeah. They had a notepad and a pencil or a pen, and they had to go and talk to the sister sorority house and get all them. The only difference was the pen was on a string tied to something, and they all knew what it was tied to. So the girls were really taking advantage of writing out all their answers on the survey. So it made me chuckle. One of those
I can see why that would make you chuckle.
Random thoughts of that, but
yeah, man.
So Hopkins, you said?
Tom Hopkins, yeah.
Tom Hopkins. All right, I'm going to have to look this up.
I think the name of the book, as I remember, it's The Art of Selling. And what's so intriguing about it, I can remember the day I bought it. I was in Barnes & Noble. And
I think I have this book. I just don't remember.
And this was just like my own personal sales journey of becoming a sales warrior, is whenever I was out and about, I was always thinking of ideas that would make me better in sales. So we didn't have the internet when I started out in sales. And
Yeah.
so like one idea I had when I was in that Barnes & Noble, I bought the Tom Hopkins book. And you know what else I bought? This will blow your mind, but I think it's worth mentioning. I bought an almanac.
Okay.
Do you know how much money that almanac made me over the years, the 5 years I was doing industrial chemicals?
Really?
A lot of money. Do you know why?
No, I'm
So
totally at a loss.
the
here on
sales
this.
director, he was really good at like teaching things that could help us. And he said all kinds of stuff. But one thing he used to say is people don't buy from companies, they buy from people. That really rang home to me. The other thing he said is like, I know you're in Dallas and you think living in Dallas is a great thing, John. I mean, I'm in my early 20s and I'm like, yeah, it's a great thing. He's like, you know, John, everybody lives somewhere that they're proud of and that they like. And then that hit me. And I'm like, and that's kind of what spurred the idea of the almanac. Now the almanac is Google Maps. Back in the day, it was the almanac. And so I'd get somebody on the phone. You're from Connecticut. What part of Connecticut?
Yeah, I lived in Glastonbury.
So we'd be talking on the phone, and I'd pull out C for Connecticut, and I'd have the whole map of Connecticut. And then I would go to the right where it would have the list of cities and Glastonbury.
Yeah.
I would go down, I'd go Glastonbury. Then I'd go down and I'd see, oh, there's a lake, a great big lake right outside of Glastonbury. Is there?
Yeah.
Okay. So I key in on that lake. What was the lake's name?
I have.
Okay, no worries.
I only lived in Glastonbury for like 4 years.
Okay. Well, let's say the lake was called Lake Glastonbury.
Yeah.
Okay, it'd be like, oh, wow, so you're like really close to a lake. Do you and your family go to that lake? Oh, yeah, we love that lake. Do you have a place on that lake? No, we don't, but friends of ours do. Well, how genius is that? Because I'm selling a very generic product over the phone, and now we're talking about their family going to a lake and having friends, and now we have something completely different to talk about. Has nothing at all to do with my product. And then my next step is, as I find out, like you were talking about the twins, I let them talk about all the great times that they had at Glastonbury Lake. And then I say, you know, that's so awesome, Bob. You know, I grew up with a lake right next to my house, and my dad's best friend had a boat and a lake house, and I had so much fun and enjoyed it so much. Well, now we have relatability. So here's this guy in Dallas, knows nothing about this individual in Connecticut, but now we have commonality. We both grew up close to a lake. We can talk about boats. We can talk about lakes. We can talk about funny things that happen on the lake. So that's the art of rapport. It's
Absolutely.
about relatability.
I like that.
Yeah.
Like finding those things, like that's.
And sometimes it's a little nuance, you know. You gotta like I say in my book, but you got to pick up the, you got to find like the needle in the haystack, so to speak. Like you got to like listen so intently that little thing will come up. But if you're talking, you're not going to hear it. But if they're talking and you're listening, you hear it, and it's gold. Like it is absolute gold. And if you're well read, you can take that little thing of whatever it is, and you can key in on it. You know, it's powerful. Like you find a lot of people in New York City, as an example, big fans of John Lennon. And I'm like a geek when it comes to the knowledge of John Lennon's life and Yoko Ono and all that. It's kind of wild, but you know, I'm an old Gen Xer, almost a baby boomer. So like
in your wheelhouse.
it's real. I've seen that movie. It's pretty good. It's not great. It's pretty good. No. The movie out right now is called 1 to 1, and it's about like the last concert John Lennon ever did.
Like a documentary?
Yeah, it's kind of a rock documentary, but it's the last concert. I think it was in Madison Square Garden. But
It was.
But it's good. It's not great.
Have you? This came up last week,
Okay,
and I want to talk about this. 'Cause,
go ahead. Yeah.
It's absolutely fascinating to me. Have you ever read Outwitting the Devil by Napoleon Hill?
I've heard of it. I've read his other real famous book.
Right. I've read so many of his things.
Yeah.
Started.
Bro, I bought the
Jason
audiobook
brought it
that
up.
night. Jason brought it up.
Yeah.
And happy birthday, Jason.
Happy birthday, Jason.
Bro, so I downloaded it and I got this 2-for-1. It was that and some other little Napoleon Hill like add-on. Like that's real short, but like I tore through that whole thing. I listened to it once completely in like the first like 4 or 5 days. I am now almost through listening to it fully again for the second time. It is definitely, if not my favorite book, it is in the top 3.
Now, isn't it scary that that book was written in 1938 and literally
And
sounds like he's talking about now?
Yes, and
It is scary.
And was withheld for so long because of the content in the book. And I'm sure somebody will roast me about this on here, or get all churchy or religious on me on this, but it get past that. If that is your thing, get past that, because if you could substitute the devil for a lot of things. And when you break it down into just positive and negative, which he does, breaking it all the way down to an ion, there has to be positive and negative in the world. So take the other religious context out and then really think about the concepts and the things that he's bringing attention to. It is mind-blowing. I have spent countless hours since first listening to this book thinking about drifting and all of these things in life that are in this book. It is like I've already since bought and received a hardback copy. I found one other collection of Napoleon Hill like speeches that I found when I was looking for this hardback book, because I wanted as early of an edition as I could quickly find.
Oh, wow.
And I added both of those in there. But it is absolutely amazing. Like, I wish, when I ask guests or people ask me if I could go back and tell my younger self something, it would be read that damn book, because it like breaks so much of the struggles people go through until really like, I mean, like, I think he even mentions or referencing here, like, or maybe it was Huberman when I was listening to this, because like both of these are kind of like colliding with me right now. But it was like, you don't really start coming into your own and really figuring a lot of things out till you're in your 40s. And he started talking about this, and it's like, when you're going through these experiences and trying to find purpose and passion, and you're trying to develop discipline and not drift, and all of these things that collide in this book, it makes so many things make sense. And I mean, like, you could literally just wipe out the religious aspect of it, and if you simpled it down to the concepts of that. So, and I say that, like, I personally, like, the religious aspect to me was cool.
Yeah.
But
It got your attention and it made it relative so you can understand. Because in the book he says, I'm not a born figure with a forked tongue and tail. I am the negativity or the negative narrative that is in life. But I do use influential people and positions
and hypnotic rhythm, holy shit. Like, I was like, I so get this, and like how the rhythms of life in different environments and stuff, you know, like I've talked about this many times, about how I move so often and picking up on those rhythms and being around those, and what circles you're in, and all those things that influence your life and change your direction, and what kind of discipline you can have, man. I mean, it was absolutely fascinating to me.
You know, and it's the negative voice, right? Is that what we're talking?
The other self.
Yeah. So I think about that, particularly like as we talk about sales, and there's a term, it's called like, and it happens, it's so great that we talked about depression, because it's also in Dr. John Burns's book, and it's called storytelling. And it's like the story we tell ourselves that might or might not be true.
Yeah.
But we told it to ourselves, so we think it's true. And it's kind of like when you're in the sales process, because you'd asked me about like leaving messages, and if they don't call me back, do I feel like I did it wrong? I don't think that way. What I think is until they tell me no, it's an opportunity. Like
Yeah.
that's the way I think. Like until they tell me it's not an opportunity. And then many times I think, well, it's not an opportunity right now. It's just my positive mindset. Like, I don't think, I realize that I'm not going to get paid on it this quarter, but I also think of it as like, the important thing is that I showed up. I showed up in a good state, and I left a good message. And if it's if that seed falls on good ground, then it's going to happen. If it doesn't fall on good ground, but I planted the good seed. I did my part.
I like that as well, and I can see
Yeah.
that. My question was more geared towards the people that don't feel like they operate like that. There's a lot of people that struggle with finding that, and I mean, whether you want to boil it down to the discipline or whatnot. But
I don't.
And the same thing with this book that we were just talking about, Outwitting the Devil. I also really liked the fact that he was very clear in his intentions, and just kind of like how I set that stage there as well, in that he straight up says, I don't know if this came from a dream or if I really did speak with the devil or whatever you want to call it, or that entity.
Right.
And he kind of like goes through that, and he's like, now, don't get caught up in that. Listen to that and make your own judgment based off of the conversation and the lessons and the actual critical points in there. Like, don't whether it was real, imagined, whether I made this up in my head or not, it really doesn't matter. And it truly doesn't. If you just really kind of strip everything down, like, there's so much to take from. Like I said, I finished this over a week ago.
Oh, wow.
And I'm already like almost finished it a whole second time.
You just found out about it a week ago.
Last Thursday.
Yeah.
Wow, dude.
Yeah,
that's
like,
awesome.
I literally man, I told you, like, while I'm doing my cardio and shit, like, I have that audio book in my head.
The audio book is what made it. You have to admit.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm going to do the audio book now. You guys got, I'll be doing the audio book on the way home.
First. Like I said, like, I haven't read it physically yet, but the audiobook is the way to go with this 100%.
Man.
Because, like, it got to where, like, I didn't even do my normal routine. Like, normally I listen to music while I lift.
Yeah.
I listen to audiobook or a podcast while I do my cardio. And then when I get in my car, I typically either listen to nothing, maybe some more music, or I catch up on my sports radio, depending on what sports are going on.
Sure.
So, but I straight cruise through this book, like, car, gym, airplane, you name it. I was rocking this book, getting through it, and then I was like, I gotta listen to this again. Like, I know there's like a million things I missed already. Like, I gotta go back through this.
Man, you got me encouraged. I'm definitely going to listen to it on the way home because I can get it for free on Spotify.
I mean, the other one I just finished recently too is Traction, and about EOS, and that is amazing as well. Like, big plans with that too. So I think that's,
Hey, we were talking about sales tech. Can I mention something that I think would be super helpful to people that are maybe struggling in sales?
Please do.
So I think about this a lot, and so it's happened a couple times here recently, and it's where I'm in a situation where I'm presented with like some kind of multimedia situation, and it's totally like they did not get my attention. Like, an example would be, I'm in a movie, and we're like 20 minutes into the movie, one of the main characters just gets shot, and I don't care. Like, I don't care. Like, I'm like, and I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, why don't I care? Like, that, why I don't care because they spent no time getting me to like this individual. And I think about that, like the crash and burn salespeople every day, they crash and they burn. And many times it's because they didn't spend any time like on the front end so that the people would like them. And so they're wondering why they're so unsuccessful. It's because they're rushing, and they're not building relationships and rapport. And here's another good example. My wife and I just experienced this. I'm not going to call and say exactly the shows we were watching. I'll say the show that we stuck on, because this happens to us like every night. So
I'm just hoping this is a show I haven't watched yet.
Okay. So we're in our game room, and she's like, well, what do you want to watch? I'm like, I don't know. What do you want to watch? And she's like, well, a friend of mine said that this one's good. And I'm like, okay. So we get into it. 10 minutes into it, I look at her and I'm like, I'm ready to bail. And she's like, yeah, I don't like this at all either. And what's that?
No, White Lotus.
Oh, no.
So I haven't been able to finish season 2.
I know a lot of people love this show, so I don't want to call it out. I'll tell you after the show what show we're talking about, though, because I know a lot of people love this show, so I thought maybe good things about it. And so we get to this next one. She's like, oh, well, my friend Carol, she really likes this one. I'm like, okay, I'm open. So we start watching it, and about 10 minutes into it, I come to the realization that we're going to power watch this show every single episode until the end. And that's kind of like what happens with customers. You get 10 minutes in and they're going to decide whether they're going to do business with you for the rest of their life or they're not. And whether it be a company or an individual, those kind of like connections, that first date, so to speak.
They're so
like you hear so many women say, oh, we went on that first date and I knew right then and there that I was going to marry him. And that's what your clients are saying and your customers are saying too. They meet with you at these like networking events and they're either going to marry you or they're never going to do business with you. And so I'll tell the show that we are going to power watch because it's worth mentioning. So it's, what's it called? It's about the President of the United States and Paradise.
Paradise.
Yes, Paradise.
Yeah.
When they had to go underground.
What's that?
Is that the one where they had to go
No,
underground?
I know which one you're talking about.
That's not Paradise?
Yeah, I think it is.
It is, but the key is like we've only seen one episode and we've already decided as a couple we're going to power watch every episode, and we only saw like one episode.
So you don't. Never mind. I didn't even spoil it before you forget. That's it.
Yeah, no way, it's okay.
I know, I had to take a minute too because we stopped
I'm okay
at a
being
certain
spoiled.
point.
But the thing I was going to drive home is they spent some time in it getting us to like them. Like,
Yes.
Yeah.
like
Character development.
Like within the first 10 minutes, I liked the Secret Service agent. He had a family. I liked the kids. I felt like I had known the Secret Service agent before.
They did a really good
They
job
did a really good job.
Character development up
And
front.
and
That's where Game of Thrones killed me. The first time we tried to watch Game of Thrones, because that first 2 episodes, you start seeing the White Walkers and all this weird shit, and you're like, oh, is this like a zombie apocalypse bullshit thing again?
It takes them 4 episodes.
It takes them like 3 to 4 episodes, but if you get to that 3rd episode and you really start meeting a lot of the characters, now you're hooked and you'll watch all the rest of the shit. But there's so many shows that miss that. And like honestly, like that's one of the hardest things with the podcast, especially long format.
Yeah.
You know, like, and this is why we're gonna make some changes. And I'm not gonna talk about that yet, but if you don't, like, if someone tunes in here for the first time in the first 5 minutes and I'm doing your introduction, if we don't smash that out of the park, they're like, well, the fuck, I want to listen to this guy talk for 2 hours. I mean, seriously, like, if you don't hit them hard in the first 5 minutes, they're clicking the next reel, the next short, the next this, that. But the shorts are all doing fire.
Yeah.
So what does that feedback tell you? And like, are you willing to change? Are you willing to like adapt and grow with it? Like, there's just so many things, but everybody has to do that. And I think it's a great thing to look at with your sales too.
Absolutely.
You know, are you in that first meeting, are you leaving them with an impression of you that like, hey man, like I want to get to know him more. I want to like, what is that dude about? Like, and I mean, he didn't even tell me what he actually does.
Right.
You know, like, but that guy, when he came in the room, like, that's why so many of these things matter, and having those disciplines in your life to be able to have that kind of room impact.
Yes.
I mean, you see it, and people will shit on what makes them uncomfortable, but I mean, you can even look at a guest like I had last week, like Jason Nemes. Jason can be very intimidating. I mean, he knows what he wants, he knows who he is, he knows what he stands on, and he ain't letting nothing come in front of him. I mean, you can see that from his personal appearance, like the way and the time he's put in the gym, and his health and his mind and his body. I mean, but then he is literally tatted from head to toe. And some people like, could he do that if he wasn't in great health and jacked? Probably not. Probably wouldn't have the same presence walking in the room. It would still grab your attention, but would it have the same effect as the guy walking in that is dressed to the tens, has visible tats everywhere you see, is in excellent physical fitness and health? That gets your attention. You're like,
absolutely.
Damn, like that dude, even though it's not like your stereotypical like person walking in,
right?
He's not all whitewashed. Like, you're like, it gets your attention. Like, man, well, shit, I want to get to know him. Like, that dude just walked in here like he owns the damn building. That dude just pulled up in a McLaren. You're like, well, shit, all right. Like, and I'm not saying it's all about the flash and having the things, but I mean, how you come off and how you present yourself is key to any of that. And
absolutely.
Again, you need to think about that. Like, if, I hate the cheesy ass stuff, like, where people will tell you, like, smile when you're talking on the phone and whatnot, but, like, there is an element to that is important.
I'll tell you, I believe that. If
you're having a bad day, like, you might want to, like, check yourself and, like, be like, all right, am I going to let what state of mind or what happened to me last night or whatever, is this now going to dictate my whole day? Because if it is, I probably shouldn't even answer this call right now. Because if that's my one shot to leave an impression with this client I've been trying to call on and now they're calling me,
right?
You might not want to answer that phone.
Right.
But if you can, like, recognize that about yourself and go, all right, cool, like, check. All right, I gotta put on a different game face here. Like, it's time to, like, button that up and let's put on the game face and let's go out here and have a conversation with this person. This guy really doesn't care or give three shits that I had a bad night or that I didn't sleep well or, whatever the million fucking reasons you want to come up with of why this isn't going to work for you. Right. You got to retrain that in your mind. Like, I'm not about the whole, like, put smile on my desk thing or whatnot, although I am a, like, sticky note person, but it's a check yourself thing. Absolutely. Not the other way around.
I wanted to give an example since I made that example of, like, watching a movie and seeing some guy get taken out and not caring about it. Yeah. And then I made the example of Paradise where they did such a good job of making you like the Secret Service guy and also making you like the actor playing the president, that actor, that character. You're like, okay, we're in. Like, these are interesting characters. We're in. We don't even know what the plot is, but we're in. We're watching every episode. So I wanted to talk about, and this will sound kind of odd maybe, but so I watched this movie on Jeffrey Dahmer, and here's how it starts out. It starts out.
I can't watch shit like that. So.
No, I didn't think I could either. I accidentally, I was scrolling and I didn't realize it was about Jeffrey Dahmer because it started out with this woman having a baby. So this woman has a baby, so you get to see this baby being born, and she is so happy, like huge smile on her face, and then you see the baby's first birthday, and you see the baby grow up, and the baby has a speech impediment, and so like you feel sorry for the child now that's going to struggle with speech talking or whatever. And now you see the baby at age 22 and meets Jeffrey Dahmer, and Jeffrey Dahmer kills him, and you're just so like it's like they got you. Like you hate Jeffrey Dahmer after seeing that baby being born and knowing that mom got that baby taken away from her, and that this baby
struggled through life.
This was a person that he just brutally murdered because, well, I can tell you why Jeffrey Dahmer was so crazy, but his mom took drugs when she was pregnant with him. I don't know if you know that or not. Did you know that?
I know, yeah.
Okay, yeah, like tons of drugs. Yeah. Not a little amount of drugs, like she was a druggie while she was pregnant with him. So it's not really completely his fault that his brain was so messed up. But like that's an extreme example of making that emotional. They made that emotional connection with me in that movie. In that other movie, they made no emotional connection with me. And in that other, as we were like watching another show, they made no connection. And that's the problem. Most salespeople don't make a connection with the person, and people buy from people.
You know, and I can relate to that too in the sense that, so for Memorial Day, I had saved a movie that I wanted to see, and I knew my wife didn't want to watch it. Like, that's not her cup of tea, per se. And the movie was Warfare.
Okay.
And people that I know were involved in either that situation or similar ones, and I thought, what better way to honor them, you know, and have a little time to just think about those people than I was going to watch this movie.
Right.
And this movie, all right, first and foremost, if you haven't seen Warfare, it is not like Act of Valor. You know, Act of Valor had me on the edge of my seat the whole time. It's a lot of action. It's a great story.
Yeah.
You really fall in love with all the characters, and you really want to and it's a very emotional movie, and it's war. I mean, bad things happen.
Right.
Like, they're not showing you the pretty shit.
Right.
You know, so Act of Valor, great movie. Actually, one of my favorites. Like, love that movie.
Right.
But then Warfare, it is almost like you're like a CNN reporter that like got sent across enemy lines, and you're following this group of special operators, and you're right there with them, man. And like, it's brutal. Like, I had a really hard time watching the whole thing. I don't know how some of my other friends that were in those situations went and like watched that in the theater and were able to like really process and get through that. Like, I'm interested to have that conversation with them at some point next time I run into any of them. But that was brutal, man. But like, it's the same thing, but it got you in a different way. It was still that raw and real connection. Yeah. And because they made you feel what was like really there. Yeah. And like, I mean, everything from like walking down the street to the time they got in the building to the IED going off. Like, I mean, like all the shit, like it's powerful, man. Like, there's so many shows like today, like I was saying, I was really excited to see what you're doing. I was hoping it was one we hadn't already seen or started watching. Yeah. We're wrapped up in Mobland right now. Got one to watch for Sunday. I can't wait. But you know, it's so many of these do such a bad job of getting you interested in the story or the characters in the beginning. Yeah. Like, they wait too long. Yeah. And in sales, like, if you don't get the person interested in you as an individual, you're dead. Yeah, you're dead. You're dead in the water. Like, I see it all the time. People talk at people. They don't talk to people. They don't make an emotional connection. Like, I even made emotional connections when I was in IT business, and that might sound strange. Like, how did you make an emotional connection when you were in the IT business? Yeah. Like, how do you make an emotional connection for a guy that stares at a computer all day long? Well, you talk about like the what if scenarios, and like the what if scenarios, and what we were doing for companies was, tell me about the last time your network was down. What was that like? And you just take notes and you care about them. And like, what did you do? Like, you know, Ryan Stewman talks about it like, if you don't do business with me, what's it going to be like next time? Like, we used to have that conversation in IT. So you told me that you were down for 24 hours
and you had to like fly somebody in from New York, and they were finally able to figure out what was wrong with your computer network. As that was going on, were you concerned about like you might not have a job? I mean, I'm not being, I'm just wondering, like, was that going through your mind? Oh yeah, absolutely.
Where were you at?
Do we have any ideas? You're telling me this, like, how much did the company lose, like, in revenue? Because like some companies that we worked with, they did billable hours. They billed hours,
right?
And the network being down, they couldn't bill, and so they lost millions of dollars with their computer network down. Not small organizations we were working with, and you found out the impactful pain that was going on, and then as you described, like your solution, which was going to help them have an up network and not have to have that pain next time, or be able to mitigate that very quickly. And who was going to mitigate it? We were going to teach the person we were selling the equipment to how to mitigate it themselves. Now they're more valuable to the company. And then we would give them the next idea, which was, if you implement our equipment throughout your whole computer network and you sign up for all our training and you're basically an expert at this, do you think that'd make you more valuable to maybe leave this company at some point and go to another company?
Right.
Yeah. Do you think you could get like more money? And that's exactly what happened. We would go in, we would implement our solutions, and they would be at like Burlington Northern, and they'd go to work for Verizon, and they'd get a raise. And it'd all be based upon like being a master of our equipment.
That's awesome, man.
So like that's an example of how you make an emotional connection in something that would be considered non-emotional.
Yeah.
Which is computer hardware and software. Nothing real exciting about that.
Yeah, still finding a way.
Yeah.
Well, I want to be really respectful of everybody's time, and I want to thank you for coming out and doing this with me, man.
Yeah.
We'll definitely have to do one again at some point. But now's the time at the end of the show where we do our 2 questions we ask everybody. So first, right out the gate, is if you could leave your kids with one piece of advice, what would that piece of advice be?
One piece of advice, so it'd probably be my life motto, which is, and I didn't mention this, but both my dad and my brother died when I was 27 years old of massive heart attacks.
Oh,
so yeah,
to that.
A lot of trauma there, but that's what's created my life's motto, which is life is for living. And don't waste one day. Life is for living, and don't sweat the small stuff. Like, life is for living. You're here to do great things, and it's as simple as that. I mean, life is for living. It's lost on so many people. They complain about so many things, and while they're complaining about things, they could have been living their life. Because
you're gonna love outwitting the devil.
What's that?
You're gonna love outwitting the devil.
You are.
Am I? Oh, cool.
I can already tell, man. You're gonna be calling me when I burn through it.
Well, so the other thing, it's a double part of so it's life is short and life is for living. Those are my 2. That's like my whole motto for my life is like, if I'm ever trying to get motivated to do something and I'm tired and I don't want to do it, I'm like, life's short, John, and life's for living. Get in that car and go watch that concert or Uber there.
Absolutely.
So that's the one thing I would tell them.
All right. Now's the fun part, because the show's called Common Sense. We like to call this segment, Give Us Your 2 cents. And this may be something you just want to share with the audience that we didn't get to, or maybe we didn't get to go deep enough on something, or hell, it can just be your rant. It really doesn't matter. It's your 2 cents. So,
oh, okay.
Mike's yours.
Well, being a sales guy, I got to tell you that like I have a professional sales course that's available on my website, saleswarriorinspire.com. And people be crazy not to get it because it's 30 hours of inspiration, video, audio, and worksheets from me. And it's like $25, which is crazy. And then I also do one-on-one sales coaching and different levels, gold and silver, depending upon how much you want, to level up. And then I also do group sales coaching. So my 2 cents would be like, invest in yourself. I would tell you to definitely, if you're trying to be a good salesperson, you can't get better than like working with me. But if you don't work with me, start investing in yourself. Like, get yourself the nice clothes to wear. get yourself nice shoes, get a nice watch, get a nice haircut every week or whatever you got to do to level up, get in the gym, eat healthy. You got to fire on all cylinders. And the other thing I would say too, like there's two schools of thought, and I always use the McDonald's analogy. Are you familiar with the McDonald's analogy?
I am now.
Okay, so Ray Kroc, he's the world famous guy that turned into like $120 million enterprise back in the day.
The movie on this is really good.
Okay,
too.
so you saw the movie. All right, so I read the book and saw the movie. So Ray Kroc, I think he gave each one of the McDonald brothers like $1.5 million. He took out a loan to do it. So each one of the McDonald's brothers ended up retiring with $1.5 million. And Mac McDonald, who they made the Big Mac out of, what a name. Like if you're going to have a child, why would you call him Mac? Like Mac McDonald. But anyway, I digress. So they each got $1.5 million after taxes. They got $1 million. They sold McDonald's. Ray Kroc basically put them out of business. They both retired. And Mac ended up dying like not too many years afterwards. And a lot of people don't know that like Ray Kroc had a pretty short life. So he built this huge corporation, quite impressive, but he never retired. He basically died while being the kingpin of McDonald's from pancreatic cancer. And then the gal that he married ended up like giving most of the money away to charity, which is great. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but I would say like I lean more towards the McDonald brothers than I do Ray Kroc.
Yeah.
I always think about this, like Jason's a great example, and I love Jason, and like he's me when I was that age. Like I wanted to be Jason, but now that I'm almost 60, I'm more like the McDonald's brothers. Like I like hanging out at my lake house and going to concerts. And, I'm like more about like less goals, more relaxation. I know that kind of goes counter to a sales trainer, but like, there's more to life than
when you've hit your
attainment.
goals.
Yeah, that's true too.
But
that's the thing too.
Perspective.
Like you got to be like.
You're coming at this now from someone who's almost 60.
Right.
And you've been able to establish through sales and set up this path to give you this life, which is obviously a goal that you had for yourself.
Absolutely, yeah.
And now you're there. So I'm sure it feels weird to look back and realize like you're here. What's the next goal? You're just saying to me, those priorities and things now have changed a little bit. Whereas now that I've created this atmosphere in this world that is what I wanted, and I have these necessities, these things that I wanted, now it's time to have fun, and I can relax more. My goals don't have to be as aggressive. It's almost like an investment portfolio. Like you did the hardcore investing, the high risk, the high stakes, the high achieving, all of that early on. You have that established now. You're good. Well, now you can take the less risky and, be a little more conservative and enjoy having put those efforts.
There's something to be said for that, because if you get on top of a mountain and as you stand on that mountain and you look up and there's this guy on this other mountain way up here and there's this next guy way up here and you're not happy with the mountain that you're on top of, that's like the epitome of non-success.
Yeah, it's comparison, and it's how it's the root of all evil, and like steals that own.
Yeah,
like,
there's just so
trying to do that. Like, that's why I think you're like humbly coming from that. Is I set out for me and my family to do these things. You're kind of there, whether you realize it or not.
Right.
And now you're not trying to chase the next peak. You're just trying to do the other goals within that peak that you got to that was your goal.
It's more like
you're not chasing the next high.
Like I'm honestly, I'm not trying to level up.
Yeah.
I'm just, I
want to have quality
self-actualization,
quality relationships,
absolutely, like
experience.
Like being a great friend with you would be more important to me than making another $1 million.
Yeah, that's
not going to change. Yeah, that's not going to change my situation.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Right on, man. Well, I've
yeah,
really
awesome.
enjoyed sitting down with you and getting to
Cool.
know you more, John.
Absolutely.
Thank
man.
you again for reaching out and
Thanks so
doing
much
this.
for having me.
You guys, I'm going to wrap this up quick, but I do want to let you know we're going to have a little bit of a change of venue next week, and this is going to be a fun guest, I think. It's a good friend of mine, one of my favorite bartenders. We're going to be hanging out with Big Bill. Sometimes I call him Jose. I'm sure I'll do that, and he's going to rip my ass, and you guys are going to get some good laughs out of this one. But there's an event here, so we can't actually use our space. So if you are listening or you made it this far into the podcast, I'm going to let you in on something. So if you're in DFW and you want to come out, you want to see how we do our thing, you want to see one of my favorite hangouts, we're going to be shooting live in the back room at Will Call Bar in Deep Ellum. So my good friend JR that you guys saw in here, and Bill, Big Bill, works with JR. You might know him from TNT or the Back Nine or Will Call, or I mean, there's hundreds of bars he's worked at over the years. Everybody wants to drink from Big Bill. I'm gonna make you make the fruity ass one so y'all can all make fun of me, but I swear to God, y'all go have it. You'll want this by your pool every day in the summer. It's a great drink. But we're gonna be sitting down, we're gonna be chilling at Will Call. So I will be down at Will Call next Thursday, probably by 4:30. We'll stay till whenever, but y'all come join us if you want to come and see the show. Great wings, great drinks, cheesesteaks. Like JR and his guys do it big up there. So y'all come out to Deep Elm, check it out if you want. We're going to have a live show there, and let's make it fun. Appreciate all of y'all for joining us. See you next week. Peace.